Hi, everybody. Welcome to CBuzz. So glad that you could join us for our award-winning podcast. This program is presented by the Columbus Chamber of Commerce and proudly recognized as Columbus's very first business-focused podcast. We are thrilled to bring you the show in partnership with Capital University. I'm Mikaela Hunt, your host and brand journalist for CBuzz, where we dive into compelling stories of the leaders who are shaping Central Ohio's vibrant business community. Today, we're on the mic inside the Convergent Media Center at Capital University. If you could see this place, it is a really dynamic space where students and faculty collaborate on music and film, creative writing, and so much more. We love sharing these incredible stories with you as we capture them inside of this innovative hub. And we want to welcome our guest for today, Julie Granillo, President and CEO of Werth PR. Julie represents the third generation to lead Werth PR, a respected communications and public affairs firm founded by her grandfather in 1963. Julie brings multidimensional perspective shaped not only by her family's legacy, but also by her experience leading strategy and operations for two early-stage startups in Nashville, with a focus on health and human services. Today, Julie advises clients on corporate positioning, reputation management, and public policy strategy, while continuing to build on Werth's trusted relationships with media, state leaders, and organizations across the community. Julie, welcome to CBuzz.
Thank you.
We know each other, so this is an easy conversation. I was so glad to see you on the guest list. As I mentioned to you, I know a little bit of your story, but I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
And now we get time to talk about it today. So really excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So 1963 is when your grandfather started Werth PR. I just want to talk at first a little bit about the journey, because there are many families who have this opportunity. And to become president and CEO in a family business, what is it like leading that kind of legacy? I think I just want to start there first.
Sure. I mean, it's a tremendous honor, I'll say, and something I'm just incredibly grateful for and just kind of humbled by the opportunity to be able to take this company that just has, a reputation that was built over 60 years, and to take this and now kind of move it into the next generation and create it into something even more is exciting, and just it's truly a wonderful gift.
How did you prepare, and what were some of the conversations that you had inside the family?
I asked a lot of questions. I was in Nashville at the time, and I was in kind of the startup space. So I was started out very early on working for the venture fund for Ascension Health, where we were investing in new businesses, became employee number one of those businesses, and then did that for about 8 years, got my MBA during that time, and then went on to go work for another very early stage e-commerce startup for about another 5 years. And so was living in Nashville with my husband. We had two little guys at the time that were 2 and 4. This is 2019. And I was ready to get out of the startup space, looking for something new. And I had an opportunity to go work for a consulting firm, was about to take that opportunity. But at the same time, I was also very close with my aunt, Sandy Harbrecht-Ratchford, who was the CEO of Werth, longtime CEO for 40 years. And she and I were very close. She was my aunt and also a mentor. And so I was always kind of interested in the business. I interned one summer while I was an undergrad, but I had really built a career in Nashville. We had a house. We were very kind of established in Nashville. But Sandy was visiting at the time, and, we were talking, and actually, I was asking her about what are some of the clients, what are some of your new clients? Tell me about the business, what's going on. She talked about the Ohio Opioid Education Alliance that had kind of just started. That was, she described it as this, public-private partnership, kind of working to kind of make a dent in this opioid crisis that was really where Ohio was kind of at the epicenter of that. And that is where the light bulb went on, and it kind of took me back to my kind of first startup, which was in healthcare and working kind of in social services and pharmaceuticals. And the light bulb really went on where I just asked a lot more questions around the type of clients, and it became very clear that, we get to be involved in really meaningful work in healthcare and higher ed and private sector, really cool, interesting things. And so I realized, wow, this is an opportunity to actually get to be involved in some of these things without actually having to work for a hospital or, in government or, to kind of be involved in that way.
And make a difference, yeah.
And make a difference. So it was, that's where the light bulb went on. But I was, you asked, what did I do to prepare? I mean, I was very kind of nervous going in, knowing that my background was not traditionally in, PR and marketing. I didn't have a communications degree, but I did have an organizational behavior degree and, really ran 2 companies and had kind of this business background. And so I remember talking to Sandy. She actually came to Werth with 10 years as a teacher, a 3rd grade teacher. She had just graduated, had gotten her MBA and wanted to go into administration. But she was kind of pulled in by my grandfather who wanted to retire and some of his friends who said, hey, you need to come and help your dad and take over this company. And she did. And she was very, very kind and said, listen, if I can do it as a teacher, you can do this. You're going to be great. And so, it's just been wonderful. So
don't you feel like some of the best, I mean, maybe I can say this to you, I don't know if you'll agree or not, but some of the best communications lenses are from people who weren't traditionally trained in comms marketing.
I totally agree. And we use that with and kind of how we hire. A lot of our people, some of our best people don't come traditionally through that, how you would think with PR. But we always, and I actually learned this very early on. One of my first mentors said, he hired people based on general intelligence and kind of gauge that based on the questions that they ask. And said, if somebody's smart, you can teach them. And I totally believe that.
Do you ever miss the smaller company hustle at times? Or do you think that influences where you stand today, speaking of not having that traditional communications background?
I would say we kind of have the hustle at Werth, just being a small business, and our mentality and the people we hire, nobody is afraid to just roll up their sleeves and get to work. And I love that. We love kind of figuring out these tough problems that get brought to us. And so I love that. I really don't miss the startup space. It was it was just kind of crazy and exhausting. And so to have this company with a reputation and be able to kind of mold it and build it with, all the tools that we have already established is just incredible.
Yeah, there definitely is a feel, I'll put it that way, a feel to the startup space.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's great for a season and sometimes it's great for longer. I think people are built in different ways, but I'm sure it influences a little bit about the way you lead today. Mm-hmm. Yes, would you say so?
Yeah, it totally does. I would say I have come to realize I have a very high risk tolerance. And also I am very comfortable with ambiguity. That's one of the things I have learned about myself in the last, 5 years since being at Werth. And that has really helped. a lot in this role.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
We're in a moment where, comms is quickly being reshaped. Speaking of tools, AI, data, which I'm sure your background in is fantastic given the other work you've done, and media fragmentation. So right now, how do you see some of these tools shaping the industry? How are you guys kind of leaning into data, AI, and some things like that? I think people are curious about that.
Yeah, I think that, so it still kind of goes back, if you think kind of on the digital side, right? And you look at how do we show up in Google search, and now it's how are we showing up in AI answers, right? I mean, it kind of goes back to the old tried and true of kind of owned, earned, paid, and showing consistency online. I think the LLMs are asking kind of, do I recognize you? Can I believe you? And who else says you're legit? And so you still kind of use those same tools. So on, are you legit? I mean, earned media matters. And we have, clients that will say like, well, who really cares? I don't need to get in it doesn't matter if I'm in the daily. Who really reads that anymore anyway? Well, the LLMs are reading that, and they're the ones serving up the answers to your customers and stakeholders. So I think that's kind of interesting and something that people might forget about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you're one of the first people that have brought that up to me, that your earned media is actually influencing what the LLMs are doing. So that's, if you're showing up on Gemini or whatnot at the top of search, know that your earned media is making a difference.
100%. We see that.
You've worked across both the private and nonprofit sectors. We've talked a little bit about this. You do some great volunteer work as well. How did those experiences shape the way you approach leadership and strategy, do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I don't know if the difference in those has really changed anything. I'll say, so the first startup I was at was a nonprofit. We really lived by the notion of no money, no mission. And we really tried to operate like a for-profit. I mean, we had an earned revenue model, and we tried to run the organization efficiently, and really operated it as if it were a for-profit, just in terms of how we thought about it. So I still think about that and kind of volunteer work and board work. I think it's, I think at this point, most nonprofit leaders are kind of thinking that way. Live by the grant, die by the grant.
So you have to have those streams of revenue that are coming in to be able to be successful.
Right. It's like diversifying your portfolio, diversifying your revenue streams. It's kind of the same mentality.
Reputation also can change very quickly in today's environment. Oh my gosh. I mean, we see the headlines all the time. We're in the middle of a moment right now. How do you really approach corporate positioning and reputational strategy for the organizations you advise in a moment such as this, in a culture such as this?
Gosh, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I think when you think about like a communication strategy, I think we really go back to everything ladders up to the overall business strategy. So what is your strategy for the next 3 to 5 years? And then look at, okay, in order to achieve those goals, who are the important audiences and what do you need them to do or believe? And then you lean into those audiences in terms of research and understanding, talk to them, really understand what influences them. And then you kind of, from there, you're building, the strategies and tactics to kind of reach those core audiences. But at the end of the day, everything has to ladder back up to the strategy. So that's in terms of, a communications strategy. Actions speak louder than words. There's that I think is really important. messaging doesn't build a reputation. Your actions build a reputation. I think that's really important. We hear a lot about like being authentic. I think that's, something to kind of keep in mind. But again, going back to the strategy piece, I think you just have to start there. I think it's also important for leaders, like it's easy to get pulled into kind of social and political issues. I see and read so many things about, when should I say, as a leader or a CEO, when should I say something? When should I not? And in kind of what influences those decisions. There's a really great Harvard Business Review study that looked at why CEOs make these decisions. And like the number one driver really didn't have anything to do with like customers. It was all just their own personal beliefs and the influence of the people closest to them in the organization. Now, if you're the CEO of a company, of a publicly traded company, I mean, you are beholden to your shareholders, and every decision that you make, including that one, should be based on increasing shareholder value. And so I think it's easy to kind of lose sight of that. And so it's just something that you have to really navigate carefully and make sure anything that you're saying, you're actually following it up with action.
So what trends, we talked a little bit about AI and we talked about data. Data has always been important. But what kind of trends or changes in PR and communications are you seeing right now that business leaders should be paying attention to, do you think?
We talked a little bit about that, I think, like making sure that your own channels, your home base, your website, your blog, your LinkedIn profiles, your bios of your people, like everything is up to date and that you are posting or, putting up new content regularly. I think that kind of continues.
So let's go back again to crisis, because I know this is one thing we talked about in as we were preparing. If a company woke up tomorrow with a reputational crisis, something spreading online or in the media, what do you think, based on a little bit of what we've talked about, should leadership do? And what's the biggest mistake they should avoid? Because we talked a little bit about like their personal thoughts on whatever issue, but again, what is the first thing they should do, and what's the biggest mistake they should avoid?
The first thing I would say is pause all social media. Pause anything that's scheduled to go out. That's number one. Get a quick team together that should include your PR counsel and potentially legal. And I would say it's helpful to get something out within the first hour. So if there's something on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram responding on that platform within an hour, even if it's just, we're looking into it, something to kind of stop the bleeding while you come back within 24 hours of, the solve. So, I think one mistake that we'll see people make is they'll often get kind of sucked into having an answer when they don't have one. So they may say something that they don't fully have the answer yet, when it actually is better and it builds credibility for you to say, we're still looking into this. And we're going to get back to you when we have that answer. I think that's a mistake that we see a lot. Obviously, showing empathy goes a long way, but then again, following that up with, okay, but what are you doing to correct it or fix it, is really necessary. So yeah, it's tough, but it happens. It happens all the time.
And that's where good advisement comes in.
Yeah.
In talking to the professionals who know.
And have a plan. You should have you can have your crisis scenarios ready to go, your statements ready to go, and go back to those and tweak them and go from there.
Many companies, only think about PR during moments of crisis, but it's so much more than that. From your perspective, what role should communication strategy play during times of like growth and opportunity?
Sure.
What's your vision of that?
Well, I think no matter your financial state, there should always be a communication strategy that you're going off of. Again, laddered up to that kind of business strategy. But I think, building goodwill when you have the resources to do so is so critical. We help companies all the time really kind of, we call it, taking care of their backyard. Where are they showing up in their community? Who are they having conversations with? Being visible, being accessible, I think is so valuable. And in times of crisis, that's when you're going to need that. And also don't forget your employees. I mean, your employees are your biggest spokespeople, and make sure that you're talking to them as a leader regularly. I would say whatever you're doing today, step it up one more level and do more.
Because we always could be doing more, even though we might think we're doing enough.
Yeah, and that builds trust so that when you need it, it's there.
I was going to ask you about 3 practical things that business leaders should be doing right now to protect and strengthen their reputation. I think I hear you saying align everything, make sure everything is up to date and current. But what are maybe 2 other things they could do to really make sure their reputation is solid? And maybe you would even say having those conversations that you were just talking about within their community.
Yeah, I'll go back to the employees. I think, increasing communication with employees, but also looking at how you're treating them. Often you'll see kind of, if they're treated well, that will be reflected back on your customers. They're your first line, right, of communication to your customers. That goes a long way with your reputation. I would also say kind of along those lines, again, taking a hard look at your customer service processes. Again, who are the people actually engaging with the customers, and how are they incentivized? How are they motivated? What gets rewarded? And really take a hard look at that. And I will add one more because I think it kind of gets lost. I think that I'm often surprised by companies that really don't have a sound understanding of their brand and what they do better than nobody else. And doing that research, I think, is really, really important to kind of understand your reputation, and does it actually align with what you want to be known for?
So knowing your niche, really, that's the what would it be called? Unique selling proposition that you have.
Your differentiator.
Your differentiator to other companies that are like you.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that, maybe we get caught up in the day-to-day work that leaders don't know that.
Well, and I think we know our differentiators, but it's just like you've said, in today's age, things are just changing so quickly. And so I think, there are new, especially if we look at Columbus, there are new companies here moving all the time, increasing competition, so really doing kind of regular check-ins on, your brand, doing a brand affinity study, I think can be really valuable.
Speaking of Columbus, yes, tremendous growth over the last decade. From your vantage point, working closely with civic leaders, media, corporate individuals, what makes the Columbus business ecosystem unique? And especially because you spent such time in Nashville, I'm curious about your perspective on that.
Well, I think this is where I'm supposed to say the Columbus way. But I do think I have to say, when I moved here, it's a really easy place to get to know people and to work together on issues. I mean, people want to be involved, and they work really well together. We're involved right now with the National Women's Soccer League and trying to bring a team to Columbus. And there's so many people that are excited about this coming together And it's just really wonderful to see. So I do believe in that, and I think that is our superpower.
How did you get things done in Nashville, though? To the other look of that, was there a Nashville way that was just different than the Columbus way, or was it built completely differently?
Well, I will say I was not as involved in kind of local government and civics in Nashville. Our companies were they were just national in scope.
And headquartered in Nashville.
Yeah. And I wasn't as involved, but I think it's just kind of culturally, you have that kind of Southeastern culture. Everybody went to SEC schools. You know, it was kind of tough coming from the Midwest, even going to school there. But I do think that Columbus is just incredibly friendly and warm, and people really just have this practical mindset of wanting to get to work, which is great.
When you look at the future of Columbus, and you were just mentioning the National Women's Soccer League and trying to get a team here, when I look at that example and then beyond that, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of Columbus and the role that communications and civic leadership will play in shaping that future? That's a big question. But what excites you about it?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. I mean, when we were in Nashville, I have to say there were a bazillion cranes. And moving here, everyone was like, oh my gosh, there's so much building, there's so much growth. And it's definitely not the same. Nashville has just had this crazy explosive growth. But what I think is so great is that Columbus, the growth is happening in a very manageable way. And our leaders are really, I think, doing a fantastic job at really setting up Columbus for the future. I think some of what's happened in Nashville is just kind of like truly uncontrolled growth. And now they're really reeling from that.
I think about traffic when I'm in Nashville. I think about kind of those outer layers of the city, which is where you would see the cranes and the ability to navigate through all of that.
Our friends that still live there like never leave their little tiny area because their neighborhood, because they're like, it's just crazy.
Can you imagine not wanting to go to, for instance, Easton
I know.
Over to even there's stuff going on in the Canal Winchesters of the world. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And you can get there within 35 minutes.
Totally. It's awesome. I love Columbus.
So our intentionality, you think, is going to be really important.
I really do.
In what we do from a civic leadership and a comms perspective. We were talking before we were on the mic. Outside of your work at Worth, you're involved with the Columbus Metropolitan Library Foundation and the Columbus College of Art and Design, CCAD. You really have a motivation and a commitment to those organizations and supporting young people in our community. Why is that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I've just always had a passion for education and young people. When I was in Nashville, I did a lot with Vanderbilt. There's a group, the Women in Business at Vanderbilt. And I love students and really have a passion for education. I love what the library is doing. They have an awesome new program I'm so excited about where every second grader in Columbus City Schools will now get a field trip to downtown Main Library, which is just such a wonderful thing that they can do that and have that experience. And walking into that building is so inspiring, I think, to young people.
The possibilities you see when you walk in.
And it's the perfect time. They're learning to read and can learn about all the resources available to them and their families and be inspired there. So it's very exciting.
Oh, that's cool. I did not know about that program. Well, one of the reasons that we have conversations like the one that we're having here today is because we really believe in that continued personal and professional development. We are lifelong learners here on CBuzz. One of the most valuable aspects is a leader in business. I would love to hear a little bit about what's been influencing you lately. Podcast, book, maybe involvement in some kind of group. show?
Oh, man. So much. I will say I have a wonderful group of friends here, all kind of women leaders of businesses, organizations. We get together regularly. They are so inspiring. And I learned so much from them. So I will say them, special shout out. I'm listening to a lot of Scott Galloway on my drive-in.
Okay.
Who I really like his perspective. NYU professor, marketing, and just kind of provocative. I don't obviously agree with him on everything.
Did he just do
very interesting?
Did he do the thing on males, young males? Oh,
yes,
I
he did.
have listened to these podcasts.
Yeah.
And raising males,
Yes.
I think it has been very eye-opening. And I made my husband listen, and I said, how are we going to share this with the boys?
I have 2 boys, and
So he is provocative, but he also has really good information and data.
Yeah, and he's bought and sold many companies. I really appreciate his perspective on, like, he really leans into compensating his employees well. He thinks that's kind of one of the keys to success. I, really believe in that. He describes himself as, right of center left, which I can relate to.
I think a lot of people can. We just don't talk about it much.
Yeah. So, but again, he's also contradicts himself all the time. So,
So Scott Galloway.
Scott Galloway. Yeah.
Okay.
He's
check
who
him
I've been
out, guys.
listening to lately. Yeah.
And then the group of women leaders, business owners, was that organic, or is it a specific group through a specific organization?
No, it was organic. A couple of us came together. We're getting drinks one night and realized we wanted more women business owners to get together. We were all kind of dealing with the same stuff, raising kids, leading teams, not really having a lot of time outside and outside of work. And so it's really fun.
So find yourself a professional village is what I'm hearing.
Yes, it's a great way to put it.
Well, thank you. You dropped a lot of knowledge today, and I think people will be able to put some of this into practice, which when we have someone like yourself on, it's exactly what we want to do from a business state and a communication state.
That's very kind. Thank you so much. This has been great.
If any of you listening would like to learn more about Werth PR and their work in communications and public affairs, we encourage you to visit their website. That is werthpr.com, WERTHPR.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you could take a moment to rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback really helps others discover our show and ensures we keep delivering the stories that matter most. CBuzz is brought to you in collaboration with Capital University, and we are so grateful to their talented students, faculty, and staff for their invaluable support in bringing this podcast to life. I'm Mikaela Hunt, your host for CBuzz, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce's premier business podcast. We'll be back soon with more fresh and inspiring stories from Central Ohio.